Hey guys, it's Lady Raven, the Wild Witch, and welcome to The Witches In Today. Today I am here to talk to you guys about the differences of the new moon and the dark moon. And a lot of times we use those words interchangeably. So I wanted to kind of go over the details because it's actually representing two different types of energy that are available to us at the end of a moon cycle and at the beginning of a moon cycle. So there's going to be a couple different offerings, and depending on what it is that you're trying to do, you can use this energy for one thing or for another. So let's talk about first what happens at the end of the month, right? So in terms of the moon cycle, let's talk about what happens at the end of the month. So you have the moon is basically waning, and it's shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, and it's getting to the point where it's going to be completely disappeared. So there's not going to be a waning or a crescent. It's going to be, sorry about that, apparently my phone, I decided to not mark it silent for today. But anyway, so there's going to be an energy there. There's going to be an end of the waning cycle, and then there's going to be the beginning of the waxing cycle. So you actually have these two different things that are happening. When you look at the new moon itself, it's really part of neither cycle. Because if you look at it, the waning cycle is going to have a sliver of moon, and the waxing cycle is going to have a sliver of moon. So when you're really looking at the new moon, it's when there is no moon whatsoever. So the moon is completely hidden, which at this point, and when you look up at the sky, think about it, that the moon is very hard to tell if you are on the last day of the waning cycle or on the first day of the waxing cycle. So when you're looking at a new moon, you're looking at all kinds of possibilities that could happen. So this is why that moon a lot of times is new beginnings, because you're in between. You could shrink or you could grow. You have the choice to go wherever it is that you want to go, because you're literally between cycles. So this is the energies that you're going to have in a new moon. It is completed the cycle of the waning moon, and now it hasn't yet begun the cycle of the waxing moon. So it really is that in-between point, right? So that's basically what the new moon is. But when you look up at the sky, really what's going to happen is you're going to notice there's going to be a couple of days before the new moon and a couple of days after the new moon where the moon is still going to be mostly dark. I mean, there may be that little sliver, but sometimes it's very, very small that we may not even be able to see it with our naked eye. So what's going to happen is this whole period of tiny slivers plus the in-between phase, the whole thing is called the dark moon phase. So this means that the moon is dark, that there is no light coming in. So what are the things that you can work with? So let's take a look at the ending of the waning cycle, right? So you have a dark moon that is going to be at the end of the waning cycle. What is happening during that time? So what's happening is the cycle is closing, it's endings, it's coming to completion, right? It's kind of like everything has happened the way it was supposed to happen, and it's closing out the end of the cycle so that it can then begin a new cycle. So you're closing out that cycle at the dark moon when it's sitting in its waning phase. And then you come to the new moon, which is the time in between, rest, relaxations, new beginnings, potential, all kinds of things that could happen. And then from then on, you move on to the next phase of the dark moon, which is the sliver of the waxing moon, right? The moon still looks very dark. You can't really tell what's going on, but it's closed off its previous cycle. It's done being in that in-between state. And now what it's doing is it's getting ready to move on to its next cycle of growth, of possibilities, of potential, of just beginning something new for the month. So when you're looking at the new moon, and we tend to look at new moon, says a new moon, new beginnings, and that's it, that's all it is. You're really looking at a very complex energy, which is an in-between kind of energy from one cycle to the other cycle. So when you're looking at the full moon, you don't have that issue because the full moon essentially celebrates the very middle of the moon cycle, right? It's when the moon has grown to its greatest. It's basically reached its full potential of what it can be. So it's not really in between anything. So the full moon is about potential. It's about reaching your goals. It's about getting to where it is that you wanted to go. It's about all of your hard work paying off and getting to where you are. And then the moon starts to shrink again to close that cycle and to give you the opportunity to start a new cycle. So when you look at the new moon phase coupled with the dark moon phase, this is a very, very special. Hey, Joanna, how are you? This is a very, very special time in the month that can have all kinds of repercussions. Hey, Trisha. So let's talk a little bit about, so let's say you're coming up on the new moon and you're trying to decide what kind of work am I going to do for this new moon for this month, right? So then sit down and think about it. So are you looking at exploring your deep, dark potential, exploring the things that you can possibly do in this new cycle? So then you would be looking at the new moon because once again, it's not waning or waxing. It's in that in-between state. And so this is going to be a time where it's kind of like a time where it's in literally in between cycles. So this is where we look to the inside, where we look to our inner selves to say, what are we going to grow into this month? What are we going to do for ourselves this month, right? So that is one way to work with that energy. And if you want to work with that energy, you really have to look at your calendar very cautiously and make sure that you are working with it on the day of the new moon. Not the day before, not the day after, but on that day. So there's a couple of other energies you're going to look at. So then let's say you're looking at the new moon and you're saying, okay, I'm looking at banishing, removing things that I don't need, cord removals, those kinds of things. You're going to want to perform that work on the dark moon phase leading up to the new moon. So that's going to be like the last 2 days where the moon is dark. I mean, there may be a sliver there, but you can't really see it. And so that is going to be the appropriate time to finish the cycle. So anything that is going to be a matter of completion, of closing the books on something, of finishing something so that you can make room for something new. So that would be that energy that you would be working on during that time. So this is a great time to do work for, let's see, cord removals, of banishment, of removing obstacles to a project maybe that have been tripping you up the whole month, and finally you're like, I'm ready to be done with this. I want to go ahead and do some work to remove that once and for all. There's other work that you can also do during that time, which would be a work for making sure that things complete in an orderly fashion. So let's say you have a project you've been working on and it's been complete in total chaos and you don't know that it's going to finish, you're waiting on things. You can do some work during that time to kind of force a completion, to say, hey, I want this to end. I want this to complete and to finish so that I can be free of this and begin something new. So there's a lot of work that you can use in the dark moon phase that's sitting in that very last sliver of the waning phase, right? So now let's look at the other side of that. So let's look at the sliver that's going to happen in the waxing phase. So the waxing phase, you've finished things. You've done in that in-between state where you did the soul searching, you did the inner work to decide what it is that you want to do. And now you're moving into the dark moon phase, but this waxing energy, which is growth, new beginning. So this is where you're going to take that energy, that what you've decided you wanted to do within, you're going to push that energy without. So you're starting a new business. You are starting a new weight loss plan. You are trying to, start a new project. You're starting a family, fertility magic. All those kinds of things can be done in the very, very beginning of that. And I like to look at that as the very fullest potential of energy for the month. Why? Because the moon has a lot of growth to do until it reaches its full phase. So the earlier in the waxing cycle that you do your work, the more potential you have for reaching the big, big, big moon in the full moon. So if you are trying to do some work, some waxing moon work, let's say you're trying to boost your business, let's say, and you go ahead and you decide that you're going to do that work 2 days before the full moon, you only have 2 days worth of potential and growth. The moon's already done all of its growth. It's already given everything that it's going to give. And by the time you insert your work in there, you're not going to get as much value, as much energy from it as you would if you had done it on the first waxing day of the dark moon. So that's kind of a way to think about it, right? So how much time and room does the moon have to grow? That is a huge potential over there. So then you want to say, okay, this is the most energy I want to use. This is the most potential I want, because I want to make sure I hit that goal with a bang. So this is the work that's going to be a dark moon, but on the waxing phase that you're going to do that work. I hope that that makes sense. So let's look at the same thing on the waning phase, right? We're going to go back to the waning phase now. So if you're looking at the dark moon in the waxing phase being the most potential to get to the full moon, let's look at what's happening in the dark moon in its waning side, right? So the moon has reached its potential and now it's going to shrink. So the idea of it is what? To complete that cycle. So if you have, let's say you have a big project you're working on, and there's a lot of open things that you need to make sure you bring all of those things into completion. You want to do that work as close to the full moon as possible. So maybe wait 1 or 2 days after the full moon and then do it. Because why? You have tons of waxing energy that's going to build behind you during that phase, during those 2 weeks, for you to finally reach your potential. So if you do the work a couple of days before the new moon, which is going to be that waning dark moon, the potential is not as big. But there's going to be a few things that are going to be good to work during that time, which is those little loose ends that maybe you didn't think about, or maybe you forgot about, or maybe just didn't come to completion. You look at something and you go, oh crap, I forgot about that. Let me do a quick spell to get that under my belt and get that completed. That is a perfect time to do that. So if you're looking to shut a big project down, you want to do it earlier in the month, a few days after the full moon, to take full advantage of that complete waning cycle. But if you've gotten to the point where most of the completion has already happened, you just have some loose ends to tie up, or a lot of times if you have something of yours that you want to make sure you've done a lot of the work, but finally you get to a point where the emotional completion is not there. You've done the cord removals, you've cut the person out of your life in terms of a relationship, you've gotten the divorce, you've done the cord removals, you've cut everything out, and now all of a sudden you still kind of have that one little thing that keeps holding you back from moving on. You can then take advantage of that dark waning moon energy to do that work for yourself and to finally close the loop on that. So it can be a very powerful time of the moon because it's a very focused energy. It's really that energy that's final. It's completing the cycle. It's saying we're done, right? Another good thing to do during that time we talked about before is banishment, or to bury something. So let's say you have a project that you've been working on and you've tried to bring that sucker to completion many different ways and you have not been able to, and finally you get to a point where you're like, okay, I just want to bury this thing and move on. I don't care if it completes or not. I just want to kind of ground it, stop it, bury it, so that I can finally be done with that and move on to something, because whatever I'm trying to do to close it out is not happening. That is perfect work to be done during that waning dark moon phase. Let's see, we have a question. Thank you. This makes so much sense. More time to build yourself up in your magic. Correct. So if you look at, we always talk about how much energy the moon has to offer us, right? So the moon has really 2 different types of energy to offer us. It's got light that is reflecting back from the sun. That's one type of energy it's offering. And then it's got movement, because the moon is constantly moving around the earth. That's the second type of energy it has to offer. So when you start looking at that, so you look at when it offers the most light, everything is illuminated, right? The most that you can possibly get. You have all the light, but no movement. So those 2 things kind of walk in balance, right? And when you come to the new moon phase, you have no light and no movement, which means everything is subdued and calm, which is a clean slate for you to look and say, what's going to be my project for this month? What do I want to do with that movement when it starts? What do I want to do with that light when it starts? Where do I want to direct that energy to when it starts? So this is the work of the new moon, right? But if you segment it even further into the dark moon, the waning dark and the waxing dark, and the new moon being separate and truly a place of in between, then it makes a lot of sense of how you move through that phase. So even though the new moon and the full moon are kind of considered on opposite ends of the scale, in terms of they're both points of extreme, all delight, no delight, no light when it comes to that. They are very different in the sense that the full moon is happening in the middle of a cycle. There's no completion there. And the new moon is happening in between cycles where you get to decide what your next cycle is going to be. Does that make sense to everybody? I know that this is a kind of a little bit of a delicate concept to start thinking about. Now, I'm not talking about this in terms of astrology, right? I'm talking about just in terms of witchcraft and in terms of what types of energies are offered to us at the end of the month that the moon is able to give us and offer us. If anybody has any questions, just go ahead and type it. Sorry. Take a little drink here. So a lot of times we tend to kind of bring all of that together into new moon, right? So we look at new moon and we go, oh, new moon is time of new beginnings, new business, new this, new. It can be that, but in order for you to really make the most of this energy and really take the fullest advantage of this energy, understand where you are in that dark moon cycle and what part of the dark moon is going to offer you what. And then you can make a better understanding and a better judgment. The other energy that's really great in the new moon is the energy of divination. Because once again, you're in between cycles, you're kind of, the moon is stopped, there is no light, you're not ending anything, you're not beginning anything yet, you're kind of in this standstill moment, complete and total peace almost, right? And this is a great place for you to do some divination without any influence of cycles closing or cycles beginning or anything like that. So if you have big questions you want to ask, if you're unsure of things and you're like, wow, this is going to be a really important thing that I need to, understand, and I need to a good direction for me to go in for this month or even for the next 3 months, what have you, you want to do that divination on the new moon, the day of the new moon, so that you're in between cycles. There's nothing else affecting it other than your intention, your question, and your desire to know the answer. I hope that makes sense. So always keep in mind what it is that can be offered to you. So you really have that new moon, dark moon energy. You have a very large window of that energy to work with. So if you're in a hurry and you don't want to worry about the little minutia of, am I sitting in the waning side of the dark moon? Am I sitting in the waxing side of the dark moon? Am I sitting in the middle in between cycles of, in the new moon? Where the hell am I? If you need to do some work that is going to be new moon, overall new moon work, you can do it really at any point in the dark moon if you're really in a hurry to get something done. But if you want to make the most out of that energy, I would look at both phases that you're looking at and pick which one is going to be working better for you and which one is going to be giving you the most bang for your buck during that time. So I hope that was helpful. I know that a lot of time, and one of the things that helps, and this is just my FYI to you, one of the things that I do every month when I put, I go in the beginning of the month and I put in my journal when the new moon is, when the full moon is, when all of this is going to happen. But I also break down the 5 days of the new moon. And the 5 days, I mean the 2 days before the new moon, and then the 2 days after the new moon. I will break those down into dark waning, new moon, dark waxing, so that I know exactly what it is that I'm trying to do. And also keep in mind that those energies are going to also be influencing your life during that time. So if you're doing something and you go, okay, why the hell are things kind of coming to an end right now? Why are things closing that I don't want to be closed? And you may look and go, oh crap, I'm in the waning cycle of the dark moon. And maybe if I don't want to do anything with this project keeps, things unexpected keep happening, which keeps putting dead ends in it. So I'm going to maybe take this project and put it aside for a few days, wait until I'm in the waxing phase, and then begin again so that I can begin to give that project the energy that it properly deserves. So that's a lot of different ways that you can work with this energy, not just in spell work, but also in terms of incorporating it into your everyday life and into whatever it is that you're trying to do. The other thing that I like to think about when you're working with these energies that really helps you to really differentiate between them. If you're looking at the waning dark moon energy, let's talk about relationships, right? Waning dark moon is, I'm going to get out of this relationship. I'm breaking up with my partner, whoever that is. Then you move into the new moon energy, is that place in between where you're like, I'm not really looking for a partner. I don't know if I want a partner now. I'm not sure if my life is really ready to have somebody come into it. And so this is kind of like that in between state where you're trying to kind of decide, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? And then when you look at the waxing dark moon, that energy is going to be, okay, I've made this, I got rid of the old relationship. I thought about what I want, and I do want somebody in my life. And this is the time that I'm going to move forward in that project to be able to bring somebody into my life. So that to me is kind of like the perfect metaphor of how to work with these three different phases. Well, not three different phases, but these three different segments of dark moon energy that are happening at the end and beginning of the new moon month. So that is what I have for you guys today. I hope that it was helpful. FYI, tomorrow, for those of you who are going to come look at our live, I'm going to give you a hint. We went crystal shopping on Friday. There's going to be tons and tons and tons of new stuff. So be on the lookout. And I'm also going to have something that is called purple labradorite, which is beautiful. And that is going to be available in our live tomorrow. And I'm going to have pieces of all different sizes. So no matter your budget, you can do it. So if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to message me, or you can post them here, or you can post them in reply to this video on any of our platforms, and I will be more than happy to answer it. I hope you all have a fantastic week, guys. All right, take care. Bye-bye.